You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Posture Screen, Chiro Thin, Imaging Services, Zingit Solutions, Chiro Moguls, Rhino Coaching, Local Gold, Dr. Peter Goldman's Zone School of Healing, Go Get Talks, Mahalo Wellness, 5-Star Management, The Goodman Factor, Chiro Health USA, and Fit to Lift. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 126 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm Luke, and this is Jim.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Robert Brooks, and if you want to understand how chiropractic can take care of more people, stay tuned. So Dr. Brooks, thank you for joining us on episode 126 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. And as we introduce all of our episodes, we'd just like you to share your chiropractic story and what influenced you to become a chiropractor.
That's a great question. So I'm going to tell you, I may not be one of your youngest interviewees on this program, and that it's taken 128 of your episodes to get to me. I'm almost flattered because I have a tendency to be a little quiet sometimes about who I am. But at age 17, I graduated from high school in May and was off to college to be a mathematician. And when I ran into a chiropractor in the month of June, and he said there was a power of life inside the human body that stopped when we died. And when the spine misaligns, it limits that power. And when we correct it, it comes back to life. I said, that's what I'm going to do with my life. So I matriculated Palmer College in 1963 at the ripe old age of 17. And my vision of chiropractic about more life and less life has not changed one bit since that very moment that that chiropractic gave me that message. So there's another part of that. Again, of course, I graduated from school in 1970 after coming back to Oklahoma and getting 2 years of liberal arts college because I needed that to get my chiropractic license in the state of Oklahoma. And so my first practice was in downtown Tulsa. I didn't do too well there, so after 9 months, I left that and went to a small town in eastern Oklahoma, Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which happened to be at one time the hometown of David Letterman. So I put a quarter-page ad in the local newspaper of myself, a little weekly, and I had 10 new patients my first day, and then I was seeing basically 100 people a day within the first 30 days, and more than 150 people a day within the first 60 days. And that was my practice for the next 3 years. So that's kind of my background in terms of getting myself started in chiropractic. But I think that answered your first question about my chiropractic story and how did I get there. So do you have questions you want to review with me for this?
Just the second part of the question, which would be, what makes you unique in the chiropractic world now that you're here?
You know, one of the things that I have is an extremely active mind. So in 1975, after 3 years of practice, I closed my practice and I spent the next 18 months taking 42 unique technique seminars, which made me a little bit of I had a lot of information and not a whole lot of experience to relate it to at that point. So, but what it did over a period of time is it gave me a picture big enough of how the spine actually misaligns and how it's corrected and what we can do to actually stabilize spines for long periods of time, that it made me more or less I'm going to use the word technical monster. And there are ways to correct spines, and then there are ways to work on them. And one of the questions that you've given me is, what is my mantra? And that is to get the misaligned spine corrected and keep it corrected for as long as someone lives with as few adjustments as possible. And so during my chiropractic career then, when I started up practice again in 1979, since that time, 54 of my patients have become chiropractors. I've had 57 associates, interns, and preceptors. I've served as the chairman or the president of 8 different chiropractic national organizations. So the things about me uniquely in chiropractic is I have a lot of organizational skills, I have a lot of practice skills, and currently my way of facilitating for other chiropractors is taking care of people as a seminar about not only communication and relationship skills for chiropractors, but once you get people into the practice, how are you going to take care of them? And so there's more to it than adjusting people. So I'm hoping some of the questions in this interview go in that direction as well as in the marketing direction.
Sure. One of the things I really wanted to focus on is you focused in on upper cervical after learning all these techniques and becoming so integrated with, as you said, a technique monster. Let's talk a little bit about why you learned so many and how you, distilled that down to focusing on Nuka.
That's a fairly simple answer. So I'm gonna see what I can do to make that answer a little bit more palatable. One of the things that I had to come to terms with was the evolution of our understanding of the spine and what goes wrong with it. And so in my courses, I teach a couple of pieces of language that are going to be actually cultural friendly, not necessarily chiropractic friendly. So I'm going to use a word now, adjustment. What you and I as chiropractors do is we adjust people. What the patient gets is they either get a reduction or a correction of their misalignment. And unless you have an adequate measurement system of that, you can actually do a lot of good for people with any of the stages of evolution of chiropractic, but you can do an incredible amount of good for people if you're functioning in some of those higher stages of evolution. So in our profession, what we started with was energetic healing. That was D.D. Palmer's original premise, is this flow of life force in the human body. And that really hasn't changed. So if you're doing energetic healing on people, does it help them? Yes, it does. Then the idea of a bone out of place that could be affecting a nerve and any joint in the body that you could find resistance or stress in, if you would mobilize that joint, would that help people? And the answer to that is yes. Then as we became a little more sophisticated, we started looking at nerve tracing. So the Merrick system came along, and if you had a sinus problem, you address C2. If you had a stomach problem, you address T6. If you had a sciatic problem, you adjusted L4. So learning the distribution of nerves and then relating that to what was going on with the person we were taking care of was the next stage of evolution. When thermography started coming into our profession, and actually just before thermography, what we did is we started then establishing that if you adjusted T6 and you had to adjust it again in a few hours, and again in a few hours, if you would go in and adjust L2, then you could adjust T6 and it would stabilize for a long period of time, or it didn't need to be adjusted over and over again. So the concept of majors and minors then was put into the system. And from majors and minors, when thermography came along, and we had the ability to say, okay, there's a heat reading here, there's a heat reading there. There were 2 different philosophies of heat readings in thermography and chiropractic introduced, and one of them was a graph pattern, and the other one happened to be a break pattern. So wherever you found a break, you could say there's resistance in the spine to the nerve transmission. Now, what was happening is they would find a break pattern at the level of C1 or C2 virtually every time there was a break reading anywhere else in the spine. So then you had the pattern that would have readings up above, and you actually had the break readings that would be up above. Now, if you started doing post-tomography and you did something at the level of the atlas or axis, it would change the break readings through the entire spine. So now we kind of enhance that majors and minors concept with the upper cervical region being a major a majority of the time. And so the evolutionary stages then, if you adjusted somebody based on the Merrick system and the segments of the spine, does that help people? Yes. If you adjust people based on the thermography and the graph readings, the break readings, does that help people? Yes. If you can then correct the entire spine to where now there are no more break readings and a pre and post x-ray can validate that the spine was in an abnormal position and now is in a normal position, does that help people? Yes, it does. And so again, chiropractic in this day and time is virtually practiced in all of those phases or stages of development. And then in the upper cervical world, there are as many as 28 named procedures in the upper cervical world. And since I am currently the chair of the Council on Upper Cervical Care for the ICA that's created the 300-hour diplomate program, I'm going to tell you that what we have now is the ability to take a look at the various perspectives of all of the different upper cervical procedures. And what we're able to do now is we're able to learn from each other about this is how I see it, how do you see it. I use a metaphor sometimes of God put truth in a box, poked holes in the box and gave us all a hole to look through. We're all looking at the truth, they're just simply looking through a different hole. So virtually everything that's been discovered in chiropractic is helpful to people, but the way I got to the upper cervical community was the idea of the objective pre and post x-rays, and then Nuka specifically had the highest standards available in that paradigm. So that's how I got there. That's the story.
So you have a program called Taking Care of People. Is that something you can explain a little more to our audience and make them a little more familiar with it?
Well, I know that, Jim's program is primarily marketing, so I'd like to maybe create context, and I'm a great context guy. If I can get everything in a picture big enough that I can understand it, then I can work with things. There are 6 areas of a successful chiropractic practice. Marketing is the very first area. So marketing to me means attracting new patients. And from what I see with Jim Chester's work, he's one of the very best people at that. Sales, however, is conversion. I'm going to talk a little bit more about conversion in a little while, but that conversion is moving someone from a cultural awareness that intervention and treating a condition, for example, treating the finger, rather than finding the rubber band on the finger that's causing the problem, that's a cultural paradigm. And so sales in chiropractic, if we are truly to be effective, we need to move that from a diagnosis and treatment to a where is it coming from idea. So the conversion in a chiropractic practice needs to be, or the sale needs to be moving someone from that awareness. Now, the problem is it's almost impossible to remove intervention as a paradigm in our culture, but you can include interference and non-interference, which is fundamental to chiropractic. So the third area is actually then the taking care of people. It's the actual service. What do you do with the people in practice, and how do you guide them to a life of lifetime spinal care, and how to have the communication and relationship skills to not screw up relationships. And I'm fabulous at screwing up relationships. And what I like to say is that because I know so many different ways to screw them up, I'm also pretty good at then helping people find ways to make lifetime relationships work. Because people that leave, chiropractors sometimes do it, number one, because they're in the unknown, they don't really know what's going on. And number two is because we will do something to screw up their relationship. And so the next thing is really support, and that's giving people support on finding their own answers rather than having them for them. with our incredible wisdom about what we know about taking care of people, we can take someone from here to here, but we can't take them from here to here. We can only take them a part of the way there. And so we have to take them step by step. So supporting people as they go through a practice is, in my opinion, very, very fundamental. Then the next area is organization. It's like, how's your office organized? You know, how is your team run? How are your office procedures set up? And then the last area is economics of practice. So marketing, sales, service, support, organization, and economics are the 6 areas that I cover in the Taking Care of People program. And I don't actually do anything on correcting spines in that program, just as a frame of reference for you. So again, that's the Taking Care of People seminar is going to focus a great deal on communication and relationship skills. How do we communicate the chiropractic message to people? How can we actually then support people understanding non-interference or getting the interference out of their life rather than what they have to do to intervene or diagnose and treat a condition? So there are a lot of things you can do that can keep people under care for a period of time. So in my 45 years of practice, I actually wound up seeing about 25,000 patients personally. And out of the 25,000 I saw personally, when I stopped seeing patients in 2016, I could still almost count 8,000 of them as people who would come to me for care. And they would come to me almost regardless of what the symptom was they had, because they knew they needed to find out first if it was related to the spine and the nervous system. So the 3 enemies of progress, in my opinion, for us to be able to move chiropractic forward are going to be ignorance. That's the stuff that people don't know. Prejudice, that's stuff that they believe that's not necessarily true. And then superstition, you know. So there are a lot of different things that can help us communicating to people about what it is that we do and what we need to do to take care of them.
So what you're saying, Dr. Brooks, is chiropractic is much more than just the adjustments. A lot of it is mental preparation and positioning within the paradigm of the practitioner, and that has a direct outpour of how that person is able to assimilate the care to the patient base.
Yes, and anytime you leave a patient in an unknown situation, in other words, you've got to answer 5 questions. Can you help me? What is it? Do I have it? How's it affecting me? And what do I need to do to take care of it? So you've got to answer those 5 questions effectively in a way that takes the patient completely out of the unknown. And as we take people out of the unknown, again, that solidifies their relationship with you as a practitioner. If I were to say to you, for example, there are 5 categories of spinal misalignments. From the injury, a misalignment can be small and simple. It can be actually big and simple. It can be small with a complication. It can be big with a complication, or it can be very, very complex. Telling the patient which category their misalignment is, do you think that would cause that person to know more about what you're doing or less about what you're doing? And so again, that's one of those things where if you leave that person not knowing that, then they're still going to rely on you to manage it. If they know that, and then you've created a, this is what we have to do to take care of it, now they're going to support you in being a patient in the practice and what they have to do to take care of themselves. So again, there are these things that where you take people out of the unknown that make a huge difference in how people are going to interact with your practice.
So how do you think the world might change if everyone started getting adjusted by chiropractors instead of just the 10 to 15% that we might be seeing? How do you think the world would change?
I'm going to tell you a story before I answer that question.
Okay.
You have to realize that I came from an era when all those technique seminars I took, I took those from the man whose name was on them. There were 3 people doing the adjusting in B.J. Palmer's research clinic. It was Tom Elliott, who became a founding director of Nuka. It was Bill Blair, who founded the Blair procedure, and it was Lyle Sherman, knee chest. Now, there was a time in 1978, I was sitting in Spartanburg, South Carolina, in the brownstone building, downtown Spartanburg, the first site of Sherman College. And I was sitting there with Lyle Sherman. And I asked Lyle Sherman, I said, Lyle, why do you think it is that people haven't really gotten this chiropractic message? And you know what his answer was? It was very clear and very quick. He said, we have failed to respect the intelligence of the average man. And I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, after that, I happened to be involved in chiropractic surveys and opinion polls and utilization statistics. And I did that as a part of my state and a national organization. And I'm going to tell you that here's some numbers that I don't like, but I think should be appropriate. When we surveyed our population in Oklahoma, I actually had a committee of 35 chiropractors creating questions for the survey. We hired a professional marketing firm because we had a bingo operation going to fund it. And so we asked how many people believe that bones in the spine misalign and affect nerves. Do you know what the response was from the public? 89.7% of the people already agreed. I wanted to put a question in there. Is there a life force necessary to maintain wellness? Do you know that 71% of the population of the people in Oklahoma agreed with a life force necessary to maintain wellness? And then when we surveyed the chiropractors to see what the chiropractors thought that people would think, only 42% of the chiropractors thought that people would agree the bone out of place affecting a nerve. Only 22% of them agreed, people would agree that there's a life force necessary to maintain wellness. Guess where the problem was? It wasn't the public, was us. So in terms of how we market to people, another terrible statistic is only 11% of the people that had used a chiropractor felt like they had an adequate knowledge of chiropractic. That's not a very good number. And so even though, because of the number of chiropractors we have available for the public in this particular day and time, yes, we're able to get people to come into the chiropractic offices, but are we actually making any ground? And so your statistic on 15%, which, by the way, in the state of Oklahoma, in 1989, we had 42% of the population seeing chiropractors. There were 65% of the rural population seeing chiropractors, but there was only 20% of the urban population seeing chiropractors. So again, depending on your geographic, it's going to skew your numbers about how many people have seen or are seeing chiropractors. I need to correct that and say that was how many people had used a chiropractor. Okay, and again, there were only 11% of them using them currently, not the 15% that you've mentioned. But why would it change the world? I have to tell you that I'm one of those people that I get the message of chiropractic because life is not the same, not only physically, it's not the same mentally, it's not the same emotionally, it is not the same in relationship, it is not the same spiritually. We are not the same people when the spine is misaligned and the neurological system is compromised that we are when it's clear. It is absolutely not. I think it would affect world peace. I think it would affect diseases. I think it would affect the immune system and the spread of some of these communicable diseases. I think it would affect relationships. And so, again, from the old Green Book histories, I think it would begin to empty the hospitals and jails because people would be able to get along better. they'd be able to take better care of themselves. So what is my vision if everyone in the world used chiropractors? I actually took care of a man whose night job, well, his day job was he was a provost of a college, but his night job, he was the head of the non-governmental organizations for peace in the Middle East. And I had him read 3 of the green books. And you know what he said to me? He said, if we could get these people adjusted, I could probably establish peace in the Middle East. So do I think it'll make a difference worldwide? Yes. And will it make a huge difference? Yes. I have no doubt in my mind about it.
So I guess the offspin of this question is, why the lack of development and usage?
I'm sorry, why the lack of development
and usage? Why are people not utilizing it more?
Ignorance, prejudice, and superstition. Another thing is, remember the 11% felt like they had inadequate knowledge? We did some research on that, and what we found was that if one person visits a chiropractor, for example, it's therapeutic, and someone who visits a chiropractor who's not, and those patients talk to each other, they can't communicate. They can't share their experience with what chiropractic was for them. They might say it helped them, they might say it didn't, but other than that, they really can't share their experience. There is no real standard of care that people can openly communicate about. And I know that this question will be coming, but what do I see as the future of chiropractic? For a long time, there's been this, because the cultural consciousness is intervention. That's how they see the world. They want a diagnosis and they want a treatment. And it is the path of least resistance that makes men and rivers crooked. So guess what's going to happen? You're going to have chiropractors practice an intervention paradigm, not an interference paradigm. They're not going to be talking about where does this come from. They're going to be talking about what is it and how do I treat it. And as long as we do that, in my opinion, we're failing to give the true chiropractic message. It's not just about going on a place pressing on a nerve. The real message is, where is this coming from and what do I need to do to take care of it? And if I do that, will it completely resolve it? So there are problems that are actually created by spinal misalignments. There are problems that are associated with them that'll get worse, but not go away. And there are problems that aren't related to spinal misalignments at all. And so again, this is one of those things that as a practitioner, you need to be able to say to the people in your practice that we're going to be noticing whether or not this is something you have that's going to be caused by something that may be related to or may not be related at all. If somebody's got asbestos poisoning in their lungs, will correcting the spine help that? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on how far it's progressed.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Posture Screen, Chiro Thin, Imaging Services, Zingit Solutions, Chiro Moguls, Rhino Coaching, Local Gold, Dr. Peter Goldman's Zone School of Healing, Go Get Talks, Mahalo Wellness, 5-Star Management, The Goodman Factor, Chiro Health USA, and Fit to Lift. Let's hustle. Yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying is essential for the chiropractic community to know, because there's a lot of advancement that needs to happen within the ranks of, I know it's kind of an offshoot of what you're saying, but more unity within the profession, to where people that go to one person have the same type of experience going to the other. just saying that a person that goes and utilizes chiropractic goes and sees another one of their friends that goes to another chiropractor in the same area or across the country, they're going to have different experiences going to the chiropractor. So we need to develop a style so like it becomes more of a standardized system, if you will, that when people say, hey, I go to the dentist, they x-ray and they drill and fill. And I think that it has to come back to those type of established process that, yeah, I go to the chiropractor, they check, they adjust, and they clear. And I think that that's what we have to really get down to the fundamentals to where we don't have a population in 20 years that's confused.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So let's talk a little bit about your influence. I know that you were saying earlier that you've had 54 patients that went on to become chiropractors. That's such an impressive number. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, and again, I'm going to reflect that back to how we communicate with the people we take care of. And the taking care of model and the way this class started in 24 years ago was in 1984, I was getting results that were so profound. And, I know everybody loves talking about the miracle cases. And, if I didn't get a miracle, it disappointed me, honestly. And so in 1984, I said, I've got to figure out a way to actually tell people about what I do so they can relate to it and they can join me in supporting this practice and supporting me in taking care of them. So in 1984, I started virtually asking every patient on every encounter, are there any questions? And over the next 5 years, what happened is the exact same question arose in virtually every patient's mind in almost exactly the same sequence. So guess what the communication relationship skills are for taking care of people? They're the questions that are going to arise in people's minds about how to relate to us and how you can actually create language for the person's experience that will allow them to actually get it, to grasp it. Just like I showed you with misalignments in those categories, there are ways that we can communicate. Can you help me? What is it? How's it affecting me? What do I need to do to take care of it? You can communicate that very clearly, but if you leave something out and you leave one of those questions unanswered, you're going to leave that person in the unknown, and the unknown is more frightening than public speaking. So you don't want to leave any patient in the unknown. You want to make sure that you've communicated with them that chiropractic message in a way that they really get what it is that we do and what needs to be done to take care of them. So the answer to your question about my 54 patients is not just the profound miracles that they saw in my practice, but presented chiropractic to those people in the practice. And so the way you present what you do and what you say is really significant, because some words will translate across. I'm an upper cervical guy. I'll give you an example. If I'm talking to somebody about holding an adjustment, the word holding has to go through 3 translations to integrate in the brain. If I ask someone if their correction is stable, stable only has 1 translation. It's either okay or it's not okay. You follow that? But holding, what does that mean? And so again, we use language that doesn't necessarily relate to how people relate to the world. In the Taking Care of People class, I use a reference to a book called Dictionary of Cultural Literacy. And if the word ain't in there, then people can't communicate to another person in the culture. And guess what? Subluxation ain't in there. I'd like to tell you that it is, but it isn't. It's just not in there.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Dr. Brooks, because a lot of times when I'm discussing something with somebody that speaks Spanish, they're like, well, we don't have a translation for that word.
So misalignment is a word that's in that dictionary. Now, you can talk about the misaligned spine. You can talk about a bone that's misaligned, but subluxation doesn't translate. Now, to us, it's the subluxated spine. To me, it's the atlas subluxation complex. That's internal language. That's doctor speak. That doesn't necessarily communicate over to other people.
I
So
get
my
that.
ability to communicate what we do and how it plays a role in people's lives. I had 3 people went to chiropractic school and never got adjusted just because they were there with family members and watched. I had them come and observe the practice for a day. And what they saw were the miracles, obviously, but they also saw how people related to what we do and how enrolled they were in the process. And that's a stress-free environment. That's not me having to manage people and try to reactivate and try to get people coming back in. No, that's about me just taking care of people and communicating effectively, taking people out of the unknown. So again, my way of doing that has been around, I started lecturing in chiropractic colleges in probably 1987, 89-ish, and I started talking about these things. For example, there's 7 stages of development of a lifetime patient. I don't know if you're a stage development person much or not, but let me give you an example, okay? First, I believe there's a Santa Claus. Then I believe there isn't a Santa Claus. Then I become Santa Claus, and then I look like Santa Claus, okay? Stages of development. Now, lifetime patients go through stages of development. The very first one is faith. They're going to either believe you can help them or believe that you can't. Either way, it's faith. Stage 2 is going to be relief. Now you do something and they feel better. Great, fabulous, okay? Stage 3, however, is recovery. And some of your audience may not like this number. I hope they can take it on, but it takes a month to recover for every year the spines are misaligned. You get somebody with a 20 or 30-year-old misalignment, they've got 2 or 3 years of recovery coming before they're going to be as good as they're going to get. I call it maximum recovery, okay? Stage 4 is awareness for the requirements for wellness. Well, what does that look like, okay? This is fresh air, clean water, good nutrients, exercise, time in nature, effective relationships, spiritual community, all of the things that have a huge stack of research supporting wellness. Now, in a chiropractic practice, if you're trying to advocate wellness is not going to happen until you get relief and you get somebody in enough recovery that they don't have to deal with all of their symptoms all the time. Now they come in and they ask you, I'm feeling so much better. I have all this energy. What kind of exercise would you recommend? Okay, so that's a wellness question, not a relief question. Next stage of development is somebody's kept their spine corrected for a while, and all of a sudden, the spine misaligns again. And now there's less life. And they get corrected again, and now there's more life. This is the first time that person has a direct experience of this feeling of being alive, this power of aliveness, this life force, and something interfering with it. And stage 7 is people that have got that picture will change their lives. They'll change a relationship that's not working. They'll change a job that's not working. If they don't like where they're living, they'll change where they live, but they will change things in their lives. And so the idea of having people go through all 7 of those stages, and of course, honestly, the majority of chiropractic is practiced in stages 1 and 2, faith and relief. Unless you can truly correct the misalignment of the spine and have it stay corrected or stabilized for long periods of time, you're not going to be able to achieve maximum recovery. You can maintain relief because, again, everything that we've discovered in chiropractic helps people. But again, do you want to be in that faith and relief world, or do you want to move on up to now having people live a life of non-interference? I had patient after patient come to me and say, I've been diagnosed with cancer. What do you think I should do? My answer is, I don't know. What is calling to you to do to look at this? And so, again, it's that honesty in relationship. I've been to physicians recently said, and I have a particular condition on my feet, and a doctor said, there is nothing more you can do. Well, you know what the real truth was? That doctor didn't know anything else for me to do, but there was some other things for me to do. And so again, having that honesty and communication and helping people find their own answers, giving them that inner resource to that inner wisdom they have inside is real simple. It's not complex. And the way that looks is, if I say to you as a patient, your body is smarter than I am, and I'm smart enough to know it. Do you know who got empowered by that statement? Both of us did. And it will help you look inside and trust yourself to find your own answers. And so these are things that are, wisdom from 45 years of practice, but also from helping people develop and evolve into a life of non-interference rather than a life of intervention that's completely connected to this cultural consciousness that we're all immersed in.
So let's talk about you a little bit. What are some books that you might be in the middle of reading? Do you listen to any podcasts? And what are some of your hobbies?
Oh boy. I'm going to start with a hobby question first.
Okay.
I've already mentioned that I have quite an active mind. So I'm currently chairing the Council for Upper Cervical Care, and we have had some really significant development in the last few years. We're in the midst of a new strategic planning process. So I'm engaged in that. I have been actually trained in parliamentary procedure by a woman who is the Secretary of the National Association of Registered Parliamentarians. I've been trained in the storybook process of planning that Disney uses by the man that wrote the books for Disney. So I'm organizational wise, I do a lot of that as a hobby. That's kind of my fun. So I'm also a brother of Delta Sigma Chi, a chiropractic professional fraternity that has 5 chapters in colleges around the world. And I'm currently serving my 3rd year term as president of Grand Council of that organization, with a completely organization and a redo for our 1,100 alumni brothers. So those are kind of hobbies for me. I also do some other things that I took up because in the world of what interferes with life and what limits life force and life flow, there are a couple of other things. And one of them is what I call issues in the tissues. And these are repressed feelings that are buried alive that create automatic unconscious little programs and patterns of behavior. And I'm certified and trained in that. I'm actually trained by the Hellinger discipline in family systems and family constellation therapy, to where there are people that come before us that we're carrying things for the family system. So those are kind of places that I like to play. So if you were asking about hobbies, I would say that. So the majority of the books that I read at this particular time are going to be more related to consciousness studies. I have a couple of services that I use for books, and one of them is The Next Big Idea. And The Next Big Idea books have been really impactful for me, and that's an entire group of people that chats and goes through books that they're reading. I do have kind of a top 5 list from my background. Probably on the top of that list are the B.J. Palmer Green books, especially from volume 32 on. I think they were real significant in terms of the distillation of the chiropractic philosophy. And I really love the distinction of the innate and the educated and how they both work in our lives. Number 2 would be David Hawkins. And David Hawkins' Power versus Force is probably one of my all-time favorite books. And his map of human consciousness that's in that book. His work was based on the applied kinesiology principles of Goodhart. And he began determining the truth or the falseness of statements and things going on in the world. So David Hawkins has been another one of my valuable mentors. Ken Wilber is another person that's on my list. Just about anything Ken Wilber does or has done. And again, you know, we're looking at these people. Wilber is up to about 33 books now. Hellinger with the family constellation work is on his 34th book. And so these are people who have really not only investigated things, but then recorded their thoughts about how they work. So anything by Bert Hellinger is also on that list. He's a German with a significant background and has helped a lot of people recover from a lot of things. So I would say that that's kind of my top grouping of things that I would recommend in terms of people read. I don't have a specific book at the moment that's like my favorite, but that doesn't mean there won't be one in the next few days. So.
Do you listen to any podcasts?
You know, I don't. I probably should. I actually was listening to one of Jim Chester's before we signed on today. So, but I didn't have any experience with any of his podcasts before today either. So, and again, I hope this interview has been something that will be beneficial to your audience.
You know, I think one of the greatest things about interviewing you today, Dr. Brooks, is getting you to share your wisdom and the lineage of ideas that you've put together over 45 years of being in practice, and really supporting not only the practice members that you've served, but also the alliances that you've developed with leadership. You know, I come from not being a DC. Luke is not a DC, but having the honor to be able to hold these types of conversations and to be able to put this into a time capsule for others to have access to, that is really the most valuable part of what we're doing with the work that we're producing, is we're getting a chance to speak to you. And now your message gets disseminated out to 15,000 people, at least on this next episode when it releases. So just knowing that your knowledge base is getting transferred down to future generations of chiropractors and being able to expound upon the knowledge that you've been able to develop over these years, that's really the most impressive part of our conversation today, is not me or Luke featuring ourselves. We're the conduits. We get a chance to distill this information from you and share it with our audience. I think really that's one of the most powerful things that we've been able to develop as a team, and to be able to charge forward with great messages from great leaders and great people that have high level integrity with massive intentions, and not only about their own personal development and what it means for them to be a chiropractor, but what it means for them to have a career of taking care of people.
Yeah, and I'd like to say just a couple more things about that, because I know you've asked one of the questions you sent to me was about, you know, vision for practice. So I'm going to talk about taking care of people for just a moment, and then I'd like to maybe wrap up with what my vision of service is. So www.tcopseminar.com is the taking care of people. And I need people to really understand this is not for upper cervical chiropractors. This is for all chiropractors, because all of us have all 6 of those areas of practice that we have to be successful in. But the communication and relationship skills that you will learn in taking care of people will serve you for your entire career. And thank you for the compliment, but they do come from my 45 years of practice experience. And those seminars are once a month. They're live, they're online. They're almost like this interview where I have pictures of the people taking the classes here available. You can sign up as a student, as a DC. You can have your staff sign up. You can have your entire office staff sign up. We have different fees for those things. So in the taking care of people world, it comes with a 195-page practice manual. So basically everything we go through in the 2 days, the Saturday and Sunday, is going to be in that manual. And quite frankly, I've had people tell me that the manual is worth 3 times the cost of the program. So, but again, that can be a reference for people that take the program, that take the seminar. And then I do consulting work behind that, so that if somebody wants to take those principles and integrate them into their practice, I can have a conversation with somebody and know where they are, and know whether I can do that within 30 days or whether I can do that within a couple of months or 3 months, just depending on what their needs are. So I always base my consulting based on needs, with the idea of working myself out of a job, because I don't want to be somebody's consultant forever. But again, I want to just kind of close this with a vision of service that I created. And I did this in between 1977 and 1979. And I probably spent a little bit more than a year getting very clear about what it was that chiropractic was for me and what my role in it was. So this then would be my vision as service: to explore the relationship between and to cultivate human awareness of the innate power and wisdom within each of us to provide abundant life and health. And the subluxated spine is an interference to life, affecting the nervous system and the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being of the individual. To restore and maintain the life and well-being of families by correcting the cause of current and potential health problems with chiropractic spinal corrective adjustments. And to eliminate the need for unnecessary medication, surgery, and alternative treatments which are designed to relieve symptoms, covering up the true problem, allowing it to become worse, and preventing the body's natural processes of recovery. To support research and education to facilitate the search for the best possible spinal correction that will stay corrected for as long as the individual lives, with as few spinal adjustments as possible. And this last piece is the only one that's been added since 1979. And that's to share years of clinical experience with students and chiropractors who can provide impeccable patient care and live fulfilling and satisfying lives, exemplifying the non-interference philosophy. So again, I want to just thank you, Jim, for the opportunity to be interviewed by you, and to really be of some support to your mission to bring chiropractic to people worldwide, and obviously to increase utilization of chiropractic. So thank you graciously for the opportunity to share some of my story and some of my experience.
Well, it's very valuable, and I'm endeared to you for your message, and I look forward to working with you long term. And I know that your message will help many people out there. And that's why when Dwayne Hoskins reintroduced us to each other, I was over the moon happy, because I knew that you would have some integrity with your message that people needed to hear. And they don't get that from somebody that's been out of school for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, 30 years, 40 years. They get that from somebody that's been in the trenches, on the front lines, and have developed its systems that help not only the new person, but the team member, not only the team member, but the practitioner. And I think that that's something of high level value that we get a chance to push across the channels of communication with our efforts. So thank you so much for allowing us to get some of your time today. And I just want to thank you for being our guest, and we want you to have a great rest of your day, okay?
Hey, thank you very much. And you guys too, Be cool in the mountains. This time of year, it's really hot in Oklahoma.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, Doc, okay? Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.